night's top story is another one involving domestic abuse and violence. The victim was treated for visible injuries and police have filed charges. I bet you've heard that story 100 times. Maybe you've seen it on the evening news or read it online. And it is an important story, of course, and it needs to be told and deserves to be told. But here's the story that you won't hear. There's no arrest, no bruises, no visible wounds, no police report, just a survivor in their own home enduring day after day of subtle but relentless harm that no one else can see. That story doesn't make it to the 6 o'clock news. And yet, for the people living it, the need for validation is just as urgent. Sometimes it's the only thing keeping them afloat. This is Annie's story, and I'm telling it for her. When Annie was married to her husband, Santino, the damage was invisible. He didn't leave marks on her skin. He left them on her mind. He controlled the money so tightly that she couldn't buy herself a cup of tea without explaining it. He chipped away at her confidence with his jokes that were not funny. She lived with silence that would freeze her out for days and words that made her doubt her own memory. If she spoke up, she knew what would happen. Santino would get to her friends and family first. He painted himself as the concerned husband, so worried about Annie's well-being and her mood swings. He'd make sure that her family saw him as the reasonable one and Annie as the problem. So Annie learned to keep it all inside. No one would ever back her up. No one else was in the room. And without visible evidence, her version was just her version, her word, easily contradicted by her husband's charm and lies. It wasn't until long after she left Santino that she found validation. It came from a woman who eventually became her best friend. Her friend had seen enough of Santino to understand. She looked at Annie in the eye and said, "That's abuse. You're not imagining it. You're not crazy. Your husband is abusing you." Those sentences, that validation was like oxygen to Annie. Of course, it came too late, didn't come when she was in the thick of anything, and Annie would be the first to tell you that living without validation is trying to breathe without air. Here's what the news will never capture. Survivors of invisible abuse. It doesn't show you that they're fighting a war that no one believes even exists. And when no one believes you, validation becomes not just a comfort, it becomes your survival. When you're in the grip of a narcissist, you're gaslit until you question your very own memory. You're contradicted until you stop speaking up. You're isolated until you wonder if maybe you are the problem. And if you try to explain this to someone who's never experienced it, likely you're going to hear something like, "I'm sure he didn't mean it." Or, you might be too sensitive. And those phrases hurt almost as much as the abuse itself, because They confirm the fear that no one understands. For survivors still inside, the validation has to come from strangers, maybe, other survivors in support groups, podcasts, or forums. Like I've said before, sometimes it's in the wee hours of the morning and while you're searching online, is this abuse? And you'll find someone describing your life in their words, and that's when you realize you're not alone. I wish those stories made it into the news. I wish the public conversation about domestic violence didn't stop at the cases of physical proof. Because if you're living through invisible abuse, you deserve to hear your experience named out loud, not just whispered in the corners of the internet. If you're listening right now and you've been doubting yourself, if the wounds you carry can't be photographed, if you've tried to tell someone and they couldn't see it, this one is for you. You're not imagining it. You're definitely not too sensitive. Your story matters, even if it doesn't make the evening news. Remember that. There are people out here who understand, people who've lived it and survived it. And if you can't find that validation in your own circle, you can still find it. And maybe it's online. Of course, it has to be in a safe, moderated group, but it is there. And until you have it, hold on to this. What's happening to you is real. This podcast began because of Annie, because I believed her story needed to be told. It deserved to be told. But the group here is growing because of you, because of survivors like you who show up, who listen, who share, and speak your truth right next to Annie. To every person who's ever said to themselves, I think I'm an Annie, or quietly carried the weight of their own story. You are why this space exists. You are why it matters. I'm Kyle Hackley, attorney, author of Undercurrent, and the host of the Are You Annie podcast. Until next time, know that I honor your truth and you are not alone. Please remember that you are so much stronger than you ever believed. You are a warrior against narcissistic abuse, and I want you to be tenacious and never, ever give up on what's important to you. Until next time, promise me you'll take good care of yourself, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.